What's up, y'all? DJ the Sports Blerd. I'm back. Did you miss me? I miss y'all. Man, we had a hell of a week four going in the books this Saturday. I know I had a great time watching all these games. I was bouncing back and forth. If you guys were like me, you were watching several games at several times. Had some upsets, had some blowouts, had some really decent games. I'm gonna do a quick recap of week four. We're going to start with OSU versus Wisconsin. We're going to talk about Michigan, and then we're going to go down some of the top 25 teams and how they fared, some of the blowouts, some of the losses, and all that good stuff. I really enjoyed week four. I can't really wait to get into it, so let's go ahead and do that. But before we do that, I have one thing. I come to you humbly asking you guys for a favor. If you like sports, if you like college football, I think I'm going to start talking about more than just college football. I'm a huge fan of a lot of things, the NBA, the NFL, boxing, USC. I like it all. So I might just start talking about more than just college football on this channel. But if you're a fan of just sports in general, please, man, consider subscribing, consider liking this video. You know, I really enjoy it. I really appreciate doing what I do. Even if you didn't like it, I'd still do this just because I like talking here. And the responses that I've been getting back from a lot of you guys, man, I really appreciate it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So OSU versus Wisconsin. OSU just came into this game and steamrolled the Badgers. Ended up winning this game 52-21. The funny thing about this game, I mean, OSU led 45-7 going into the fourth quarter. The one thing that we knew about OSU last year, they had a hell of an offense. They had the best offense in the country, and there was no reason to doubt that they'd have the best offense in the country again, which they do. But the one thing that we really wanted to see was the defense. How's the defense going to respond? And they responded very well. I mean, Tyler Eichenberg, I can only talk about him so many times, but this is his second defensive player of the week in the Big Ten. I mean, he had 14 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss. He was all over the field. As a matter of fact, that defense was all over the field Saturday in a night game versus a really good Wisconsin team. I mean, yeah, they might be down from the years past, but you always got to play them tough, though. Wisconsin went to the fourth quarter only having 168 yards total and 7 points. That's just something that you don't see. I mean, this same Buckeye team last year defensively, they probably would have gotten ran all over. Graham Mertz, he's a good quarterback for Wisconsin. Wisconsin never really has too many gunslingers, but he went 11 for 20 for 94 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I mean, they were all on this guy. I mean, anytime he went to drop back, it looked like he had a Buckeye defender right there with him in the backfield. Wisconsin has a hell of a running back. I can't talk today. I'm sorry. Wisconsin has a tough running back. His name is Braylon Allen. He is a sophomore. He comes from Wisconsin. Wisconsin always has a really good running back, and this guy is no exception. I mean, without him, this game would have been even worse. He had 23 carries, 165 yards, and 1 tub. So, you know, he played really well, and props to that young man. I know he's going to get better as this season goes on. So, a couple things that I took away from this game, man. Ryan Day is by far the best play caller in the country. I mean, I've heard that from multiple people. Even Urban Meyer has said that. But the way he can just put pressure on pretty much every part of a defense is almost second to none. He is a genius when it comes to running an offense. So, like I said, this game was 52-21, and it really wasn't even that close. CJ Stroud, this guy is right now the Heisman front runner. I mean, 17 for 27. He went 17 for 27, 281 yards, 5 touchdowns. He threw a pick late in the first half. He was just trying to force a ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. By the way, let's talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. Amazing. He has picked up right where he left off at the end of last year. I mean, he played that Rose Bowl. It was him and Jackson Smith and Jigba. They were the two standout wide receivers at the end of the game. I mean, last year as a Buckeye fan, we were like, okay, we're going to be losing Chris Olave. We're going to be losing Garrett Wilson. How are we going to make up for these guys? Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's hurt right now, but you know what you have in him. Marvin Harrison Jr., he has been an absolute stud, and even wears Louis Vuitton cleats and Apple Watches on the field. I mean, that was something to see. Travion Henderson, he had a heck of a day. 21 carries, 121 yards. Mayan Williams, 11 carries, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I don't know if it's Ryan Day. I don't know if it's just they have better athletes. I don't know if it's just them having a superior O-line. But it doesn't really even matter who runs the ball. I mean, they just gas you up. As a matter of fact, we had our third string running back in there, and he looked good as well. As a matter of fact, between all the carries, there were 43 carries for 258 yards, and that was a 6 yard average. So every time they're getting the ball, they're ripping it for 6 yards. That is strong, especially when you're considering who their opponent was. Wisconsin came into this game as a top 10 defensive team. I mean, what's his name? Jim Leonard. He always has a strong defense in Wisconsin. And, like I said, they were top 10 coming into this game. And to be giving up 6 yards a carry is crazy. Before we go into the next game, I want to say one more thing. Ohio State, I told you, they're the #1 offensive team in the country. They lead. They're actually tied with the lead with 27 touchdowns. Can you guess who they're tied with? I bet you can't. They're tied with Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas is tied with Ohio State with having the most touchdowns in the country after 4 weeks. They're undefeated and they're not ranked. So if you're not watching Kansas, you would just assume it's just same old Kansas. I'm not really sure what Kansas at this point has to do to get ranked, but they're undefeated. They're tied with the Buckeyes for having the most scoring offensive touchdowns in the country, and they're not ranked. That's a little tangent, but I wanted to throw that in there. No one ever gives the Jayhawks love, but Derek, DJ, the Sports Blerd, is always going to give you some love if I see it. Before I move on, one positive, one negative. I've been saying this for the past 3 weeks with Ohio State. There's one word, there's one thing I wanted to see with Ohio State. It's one word, it starts with a D, and it's dominance. They're slowly but surely becoming more dominant. The one negative I am starting to see with this team, though, is they're starting to get a little complacent. So they'll jump on you and they'll start coasting. One thing I have a lot of respect for with Nick Saban is he doesn't let his teams get complacent. Whatever he does, however he's been able to run his programs, they don't get complacent. And I kind of do see that with the Buckeyes. They'll just start going and all of a sudden they'll be, cruise control mode. So, as we get progressive in the season, as we start playing the better teams, the schedule is kind of weak, but eventually if everything plays out the way we think it's going to play out, we're going to have to go to the playoffs. We're going to play at Georgia. We're going to play in Alabama. We're going to play in Michigan. We're going to play these really good teams. And so we cannot have those moments of complacency. Looks like the sun's coming out. I don't know if you guys can tell. My lighting just got a little bit better. I'm a little bit more handsome. Thank you, son. All right. So moving on. Michigan versus Maryland. This was a sneaky game. I didn't think I was going to appreciate this game as much as I did. Michigan came into this game as 17.5-point favorites, and they barely escaped. Now, it was a 34-27 game, and I say barely escaped, even though the score really wasn't that close. But there were a few plays that happened in this game where I feel like Michigan really benefited from and was able to salt this game away. A couple of plays. So obviously was the kickoff. Fumbling the kickoff, that was a huge play for the Wolverines. I mean, and kudos to them for jumping on it, man, and having that sense of mind to really jump on Maryland. But, even when they did that, Maryland didn't back away. I mean, Talua Tagovailoa, please, I hope I'm pronouncing this young man's name correctly. He stood up, man. He had a heck of a game. I mean, his stats may not show it, but it didn't seem like he was really afraid of Michigan at all, and actually knowing on that Maryland team was. Another play that I thought was huge for Michigan was going into halftime. Blake Corum, I mean, he had that long 33-yard touchdown run, and that I felt deflated Maryland somewhat. They came back out that second half and they responded. But anytime you give up a late, going into half touchdown like that, that is a heartbreaker, man. That is an absolute killer. And also Maryland, Tagovailoa throwing a couple bad picks also didn't really help them. And speaking of him throwing 2 bad picks, let's go over some of his stats. So Tagovailoa, he was 20 for 30, 207 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Not terrible, but when you're playing the number 4 team in the nation in Michigan, you got to come with it. You cannot allow them to, they're going to always capitalize on your mistakes. So Michigan, I will say to Jim Harbaugh's credit, he's built a solid team there. It's taken him 8 years But he's built a solid team, and kudos to the Michigan boosters and all the athletic supporters that up there for giving him an opportunity and really letting him stay, because it was rough. Those first 5-6 years were rough for him. So kudos to that. It looks like he also found his quarterback. I mean, Cade McNamara, he was solid, but JJ McCarthy, he's just another animal. One thing I have seen with him is he does have a tendency to hold that ball a little bit too long. And I know he's a really good athlete. And so, coming from high school, you're a heck of an athlete. You can hold the ball. You can buy yourself a little bit more time because you're the best athlete out there. He's a good athlete still in the Big Ten, but to his detriment, I've seen him hold the ball a little bit too long. He had a solid game, though. 18 for 26, 220 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he has full control over the offense. It's really good to see, and I'm saying this as a Buckeye fan, but it's really good to see the Wolverines moving like they are. I mean, and then their defense has always been solid, but their offense is now starting to take a step up. And for most of the reason why the offense is taking a step up is because of the running game. I mean, Blake Corum, he is an absolute stud. He's the best back, in my opinion, in the country. And I like Travion Henderson a lot, but he's been outplaying this guy. He went 30 carries, 243 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The only concern that I have with him is just long term. I mean, he is strong. He's super compact. He's kind of short, but can he continue to take 30 carries in the Big Ten? It's going to be very tough. I mean, the level of physicality in the Big Ten is second to none. I don't care what the SEC is doing down there in the South. I think that the Big Ten is more physical than the SEC. You got these big boys coming in. Yeah, they're fat. They're almost just as fast as the SEC, but they're just as strong, if not stronger than those guys down there in the SEC. So can he really hold up over a whole season, taking that kind of punishment? Will have to remain to be seen, but really liking what I'm seeing out of the Wolverines, and it's really just building up the hype when Michigan has to come back to Columbus, my city, and run it back with the Buckeyes, because I know the Buckeyes, they're probably not talking about this game publicly, but I know privately they really want the Wolverines. Just kind of go over a couple more games. Georgia, they struggled with Kent State. It was 39-22. I'm not really concerned with the Bulldogs. I still think they're the best team in the nation. I just think that they're probably looking past Kansas State or Kent State. One of those trap games. They're the best team in the country. They're still college athletes. I mean, they're still not pros yet. So it is kind of you can see how 19 through 22-year-olds can kind of take it easy. But they did what they had to do. They won the game. They're still the number 1 team in the nation, and we're going to move on. Clemson survived versus Wake Forest. That was a heck of a game too. I mean, 2 overtimes. DJ Ukulele, man, or Ungalele, who's your mama, whatever. I kind of owe him an apology because I have gone on record just saying he's not that good. But he was pretty much the sole reason they won this game. I mean, it's weird. I'm so used to watching Clemson have a really good defense. No one can really do anything with them. Wake Forest moved the ball up and down the field at will. And I don't know if it's because Brent Venables is no longer there or what, or they just had a bad game. But DJ really also, who has a good name, I'm DJ the Sports Blerd. He's DJ Ukulele. He had a heck of a game. I mean, 26 for 41, 371 through the air, and then 5 touchdowns, kept his team in the game. They have a 5-star quarterback on the bench, and I know that he's trying to get in, but every once in a while, DJ is staving the guy off. Moving on to the next game, Florida, they played a really good game versus Tennessee. They ended up losing, though, to Tennessee, 33-38. Texas surprised me. They lost to Texas Tech in a game that they really had wrapped up. They lost on the road at Texas Tech, 34-37. I never really thought Texas was a really good team. I just thought they got the benefit of losing a close game to Alabama. And, I've said it before, and I believe that there is a true SEC bias. And when they played it close with Alabama, I knew they were going to be ranked because of that, even after a loss. And it's just proven that they really weren't a good team. Alabama had a down game, and they allowed an unranked team with a second string quarterback to just play it absolutely too close. But anyways, Texas loses to Texas Tech 34-37. Miami loses to Middle Tennessee 45-31. That game, again, wasn't even really that close. I mean, it's hard to say that when you're down 14 points, but it wasn't even that close. Miami, for years, I want to say this, after the 2002 season, I think that was their last really good season, and it lost. It ended in a loss to the Buckeyes in the national playoff. They weren't doing playoff games in the BCS championship game, but I don't think Miami has really recovered from that season. I mean, do you remember in the early 2000s, late 1990s, Miami couldn't be touched? I'm not even talking about when they were the U back in the 80s. I'm talking about 1996 through 2002, 2003. I mean, they were having 2-3 years where they were just only losing one game in 2 or 3 years combined. So they're putting out amazing talent. At one point, they had athletes all over the board, and right now they are a shell of themselves. So it's almost embarrassing to see them every year, and then every once in a while they're kind of like Notre Dame. Or Texas. The U's back. Texas is back. Kind of in that same boat as Texas. Speaking of Texas, A&M beat Arkansas 23-21. That was a weirdly played game. A&M kind of accidentally won the game. I don't know if you can do that, but A&M certainly did. Bama rolls again. They beat Vanderbilt 55-3. Bryce Young looked really good, but he's supposed to. He's returning Heisman Trophy quarterback. USC. So this game, USC versus Oregon State. USC won 17-14. And for once, this USC offense this season actually looked mortal. I mean, they weren't just moving the ball at will. Caleb Williams didn't have a particularly good game, but they found a way. So going into this game, USC was actually favored by 6 points. And I was like, man, I know Oregon State's not bad, but there's no way they're going to stay within 6 points of USC, and yet they have. So one of the things that, I've heard a lot of Oklahoma fans say about Lincoln Riley is he's stinking Lincoln in the big games. This wasn't particularly a big game, but this is a trap game. And, stinking Lincoln showed his face again. But USC, you survive and advance in college football. And then at the end of the day, you get to the next game. Oklahoma. Brent Venables suffered his first loss as a Sooners head coach. I mean, it took Adrian Martinez, who was a Nebraska transfer. He gave, by the way, just on the side note, Adrian Martinez, I've seen him so many times versus, all these different Big Ten teams. I felt like he gave Nebraska his heart and soul. I felt like he gave everything he could have given to that university. And it was really good to see him pretty much win this game single-handedly versus Oklahoma on the road in Norman. So it was really good to see him do that. As just someone who's just kind of seen him go through the Big Ten. All right, well, y'all, that was the video. I hope you guys really appreciate it. Man, I had a lot of fun while making this video. I've already made some more videos I'm going to be putting out later this week. Got some really good content coming out, so I'll have 2 more coming out this week, and hope you guys enjoy them. If you're still here, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Let me know where I was wrong. Let me know where I was right, and I will always respond back to all the comments. All right, y'all. Peace.